Hello, 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 and welcome. Welcome to today's installment of Created for More, the
Created, I
podcast.
love it.
Look at that.
Yes,
I
the
have got
creation.
I've got the most fun podcast guest today, and you are going to just love her vibe. Her name
Mhm.
is Patrenia Werts Onuoha, and she's an
Uh-huh,
American living in
uh-huh.
Nigeria, leveraging
Yeah.
her global citizenship, diverse corporate experience, and harnessing her gifts of teaching to pour into others as a self-actualization coach. She's a spirited speaker, she's a trainer, and in time, an author. I honestly I can't wait to get into this conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Patrenia.
Thank you for having me, Tonbra. I've admired you from afar for a very long time. We have so
Oh,
many common threads with
I
Brala Day and with
know, I
Speak for
know,
Gold. And I
I know.
really admire the way you stepped out. I read your story of how you worked through so much adversity and kept your podcast. It would have been
Mm.
easy to have excuses, but you chose to step up. So I applaud you. Thank you for having
Preach
me on.
Mama. Thank you so much for affirming me. I receive all of that. Thank you
Yes,
so
yes.
much. So first things first, like I just feel like you're like this presence that I want to unpack, like layer after layer and take my time because there's just so much in you. So let's start with you just introducing yourself. Who are you? What is the essence of you, Patricia?
All right. Well, thank you very much. I am a little girl from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, who I lost my mother early on in my life, and my dad was my parent. So I actually had to grow up pretty quickly. At the age of 13, running a household, I've been responsible, as I say, for a very long time. But on that journey, I noticed I had some holes in myself. I was defining
Mm.
myself by what I achieved because I was trying to fill a hole. And for years and years in my life, I was having all this success, and there would be moments that it didn't feel fulfilling. And I
Mm.
began to understand that to really get that deep feeling of fulfillment, you needed to be aligned with your strengths, you need to be aligned with your purpose, and you need to work in your values. So, a
Mm.
big shift for me, I would say. I was the first Black female engineer at Harley Davidson in York,
Oh wow, we have that in
Pennsylvania. Yeah,
common.
exactly. Okay. I didn't know you were an engineer. What type
Yes,
of
I
engineer are
am.
you?
Petroleum engineer and process engineering as
Petroleum.
well. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay. So process engineering, industrial engineering. I built motorcycles.
Oh
And
wow.
one of the things I learned right away is that I wasn't like the other white guys. It was like 200 white male engineers and me. But
200 white male engineers
yes,
and you. Oh my
and
God.
me. And me, and me. They didn't tell me that in the interview. I wonder if it would have made any difference. But I think for me, what I begin to see is, a lot of people have issues these days. They try to copy, be like somebody else, right? And I
Mhm.
realized that I would never know as much about motorcycles as guys who grew up riding motorcycles, lived, dreamed, ate it. So I had to identify what was unique about me that I could
Mm.
use to solve
Well done.
problems. And
Well
that's
done.
really, I didn't have the language back in the 90s, but I know the framework now that I've gotten into coaching and positive psychology. And really, my mission is to help people to shift from what's wrong with me to what's strong in me.
Mm. Love it. That's like music to my ears. You might as well be singing.
We can do that too now. We can do that too.
Absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So how did you track going from, being in this very white male dominated scene? You knew that, there was a bit of a misalignment. How did you start to
Mhm.
track to the Patrinia that we see today?
Well, one of the things I realized in knowing that I needed to do things my own way and being able
Mm,
to step out and do that was been in a situation where it was Ann Fudge. She was the past CEO of Kraft Foods. She's a Black woman. I met her at an MBA conference, and she said the way to succeed in your career is to do what other people don't want to do and do it well. So I had an opportunity. We were starting up a new assembly line, but I raised my hand. Nobody else wanted to do the job because it was too tough. We were going to double production in 5 years. We actually ended up doing it in 3, and I'm very proud to be a part of that. But actually what I did right then, Tonbra, was we didn't have enough engineers to do all the work. So what I decided to do was teach our hourly employees how to solve their own problems and rebalance the line. And in that period of my life, they called me the limbo queen. I was the limbo queen before I was the MOJO queen. And basically what I did was, if you understand process engineering, it's like I have a visual Toyota production board, and help people to, number one, believe what you're doing as an engineer, that yes, it takes you 5 minutes to do this, 2 minutes to do this, 3 minutes to do this. So you get their trust and get that alignment. And then you say, you know what, if we're going to double production, we've got to make the line go twice as fast. So instead of 5 minutes, you got 2.5 minutes. So teaching the people how to move their work to get below the line. I went in every morning at 5 a.m. Limbo line, limbo, limbo line. How are we going to get under the line today? And I tell you, it was empowering. It was one of those things where at implementation, if we had any bumps, since the people had designed their own work, they were so willing to work through the bumps. It wasn't like, now engineer, you solve it. No, they looked in the mirror and they felt very proud of it. So I learned right away, and the language I know today in character strengths is love of learning is my number one. So I leaned into my strength of teaching, empowering, and we were able to, we bust every record at that time. With we had 72 models, huge complexity, 200-foot lineal line. But all I want to say is, where the engineers that had been fired before me had imposed their solutions, instead what I did was I helped people to bubble up and solve their own. And that was really the beginning of me feeling very confident in my uniqueness. And it was okay to stand out, because that standing out was now why I was promoted above those engineers who didn't raise their hand and who were saying, why are you wasting your time going to MBA school in the evening? Why are you doing high performance work organization facilitation, learning how to build teams? That's not your job. And I just really help people to see that you can job craft. If your job isn't exactly what you want, because I got into engineering because I was good in math and science. That's what the counselor said. But it wasn't necessarily the thing that energized me, was essential to who I was. And came effortlessly. So that's really the difference between talents and strengths. I had a talent in math and science, but when I really truly leaned into my strengths is when I got success, significance, and I moved into a zone and a flow that you're just thriving. And so that's what I want to help other people, because when I meet people, they say, how do you have all this energy? You have 5 kids, you have, you work. I've worked continuously for 30 years in very high demanding roles. And I said, find your mojo.
I love it.
Live a more joy-filled life, and you'll find a way to, reach more potential than perhaps you think you have.
I love it. I love it. So I was going to actually ask, I was going to include this initially when I started, was the first line of your bio that says American living in Nigeria. Like, how? The big question mark on that. Normally you have people Japan the other way.
The other way. Yes. It was only when I got in Nigeria, I was in church and people were praying for visas. I'd never seen that before. We were doing hallelujah, and I may get this visa. I was like, really? But really, one of the things that I find so funny, when I first went to Nigeria, I was visiting my husband's village, and he had prepped me. We're Christians and we're this, and that. And then I was there, and people were like, Nepa! Nepa! I said, honey, what's the Nepa God?
What's the Nepa God?
What's the Nepa God? I thought you said they were Christians, and the light had just come on, so people were hallelujah Nepa. So that was just one or two of the transitions that I needed to make. What I would say was, My husband and I were living in suburbia, Pennsylvania, living the life, and we were admired by a lot of people in our group, our church, our community. But we realized that if you're at the top of the mountain where you are, where are you going to go? So along with that, I had a spiritual experience at church. It was a Jabez. They were preaching about Jabez in the 90s, expand your territory. I know you're familiar.
Yes.
He's mentioned one time in the Bible, and they did books and sermons. But my experience was I was in the sermon, I was in the church service, and the lady said, somebody else, somebody else, somebody else. And it was me. I was called. I went up to the front, and I just had the experience of this burning sensation on my arm. And I noticed it was right underneath my watch. And when I took the watch off, the burning stopped. And I looked at the watch, and the watch was a Harley Davidson Safety Award watch. And that was the signal that God was sending to me it was time to move on from Harley Davidson. It was time to move on from the safety of suburbia. Likewise, we had experienced so many Nigerian kids. You would meet them and they would say, my parents are Nigerian. And that alarmed us, because that identity, as a Black American, I don't know where all my people came from. So when you have that gift and deny it, that's not what we wanted our kids to do. And we also realized that adults that tried to enter Nigeria as an adult, they didn't really know how to navigate. They didn't really know how to get around and everything. So what we decided to do.
No, you can stop. You can stop and you pick it up, and then maybe just make it silent and then continue. I'll remind you of where you are. What we decided to do. Did you want to amend did you want to put the phone on silent?
What I did, I figured out it's my laptop. So I just put it on.
It's your laptop. Yeah. Okay, cool. Continue.
I silenced this phone, and then I'm like, okay, you ready?
Yeah, continue. You said what we decided to do was what you were going to say. What we decided to do. Go on.
We decided that we wanted our children to not be strangers in their father's land. So we embarked upon the journey, and I tell you, we were like the only one on this side of the road. Everyone else traffic was heavy coming out, but we were coming in. And in 2003, we moved there with a lot of hope. Economic development was the thing I really wanted to work on. And the way God had it for me is so many things that I volunteered to do in the States. From a Black History Quiz Bowl, bridging the gap between Africans and Americans has always been at the center of my brand. But I learned my purpose was to affect the human condition. And when I relocated to Nigeria, so from making motorcycles, my first job was an executive in a bank. So I managed everything non-banking. But everything that was within my scope, I had experienced as a volunteer, and that's where I built the skills. So one of the first things I would tell anyone is raise your hand and volunteer, because the skills that you gain are very legitimate, even if they're not linked to a job title. I learned how to do fundraising. I learned how to build a movement. I did a 10-year program, Black History Quiz Bowl, which I won the Thomas Jefferson Public Service Award for, but it was a passion. We had 2 teams, and by the time I left, we had the whole school system. They were having competitions within the schools. And I was also at Harley Davidson, the relationship manager with Howard University, bringing minorities into Harley so I wouldn't be so lonely. But that helped me to build recruitment skills, HR. When I was building teams, it was, a lot of OD work and team high performance. So once I got and I did a lot of production. So we did television production, charitable giving. They taught me they sent me to school how to run a foundation. So I did charitable giving, volunteering. Wow. All of this for volunteering. They also sponsored me in the Leadership Lancaster program, which prepares you to serve on boards and in public service roles. And my sorority is the largest Black sorority in the world, Delta Sigma Theta. We have 22 people reporting to Biden. We're proud to say we're about change, and we're about, social change, economic change. And that also built my leadership skills. So when I came to Nigeria, working in Reliance Bank was my first job. I did for a year, and then I moved into, that taught me everything. Girl, we had 32 job openings, and we had 2,000 applicants. That really taught me about the dynamics of the environment. And one of my big decisions that I had to make was a king died. And so one of my staff came to me and said, Madame, we must go home early so we don't get beheaded. I said, beheaded? I said, beheaded? Is this Gilligan's Island? What are we talking about? And I said, I may have just got here today, but I stayed up all night studying. But in that, God gave me
whose king was that? That's
a lady.
Interesting. Oh wow, where were you?
It was an Oba. I was in Lagos, but it was an Oba. Oh yeah, and guess what? God gifted me with, we're best friends till today. She was at GTP, Joke Coker, then Joke Giwa. I called her and I said, you never guess what they're trying to get over on me today. And she said, girl, it's real. Listen, all our people home early.
You better go home early yourself.
So that was one, when you talk about some of those adjustments, but it happens rarely, but those are one of the first decisions I had to make. So anyway, Reliance Bank, then I went on to be a partner at Phillips Consulting, running the learning organizational development practice. I did that for 2.5 years. Oh, I love the work and the clients, the diversity. It was like God had just prepared me for that work with all the different things I'd done. And then by the time I had the 5th baby, I was on maternity leave and I got a call from Shell. And they said, head of location services. I said, what's a location service? And, bottom line, I didn't have to travel anymore because with, consulting, I was on planes all the time, got a house, it was a very, very good package. So I moved into Shell and I managed corporate real estate, leading commercial deals, growing our portfolio base, negotiating, and workplace strategy. My first 3 weeks on the job, a bomb went off at one of our facilities and we had to evacuate 500 people in 2 days. So I really built crisis management skills, and probably some things people notice about me as a MOJO queen, is, as they call me, is I have grace under fire because I'm grounded.
Love that.
Grounded. Calm.
Under fire.
Calm is a superpower. Calm is a superpower.
So tell us about just MOJO. First of all, how did you come up with it? How did you know it was a thing? And it's such an interesting name as well, the MOJO framework, more joy.
Yes. What is it? Dun 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 dun. It's the I can't even think of the name of the movie now. Mo Better makes it Mo Better, and so the Mo Better Blues. Where he's playing the saxophone, and he's like, Mo Better makes it Mo Better. And then I got into, MOJO is like that unique thing. And quite frankly, people would always ask me, Patrenia, you have this energy about you that just fills the room. Where did you get that from? And I didn't know. And then I began educating myself. So let me just step back very quickly. In 2012, my husband had a brain tumor. And in Shell, God had me volunteer to be a Be Well resilience facilitator. And it was in that space that I was learning, again, love of learning. I was being equipped with the skills that I would need to be able to weather that particular storm in our life. And I was teaching people every day. And my business is actually called Resilience Life Resources, because I learned through that process that you can bounce back, you can't even bounce forward if you use your adversities to your advantage. And that's when I really began to realize that corporate real estate, while it was a talent and ability, my calling linked back to affecting the human condition. And then I became a John Maxwell coach, and the rest is history. I moved into being a self-actualisation coach. Actually, Electric Tammy helped me build my framework for my signature coaching program. And that's called More Joy 360, and it's creating more joy in all dimensions of your life.
Electric Tammy, I love her.
Yes, she's a taskmaster, but often, even Tiger Woods has a coach. because coaches help you to groove new neural pathways. They shine
Yes.
light into blind
Yes.
spots,
Yes.
and they take you out of just, that automatic thing you're doing. Often with my clients, I say, when you're driving a car and it's automatic, you just do drive, park, reverse. You don't notice when you're going on a hill. You don't notice when you're hitting a curve. But if you have a manual transmission, you must have attention and notice when you're going up a hill, engage the clutch, move into first, move into second, third,
You're
and
more
even
attentive.
beyond that. Yeah, attention to your intention, but also I want to take you out of first gear of your life. You're in a 5-gear vehicle called your life, and many of us are only taking advantage of first and second gear. I'm going to help you to be conscious so you can get into the highest high performance. So I link it back to my motorcycle background, but self-actualization is for people who have climbed a ladder, often in their career or in their life, and they get to the top of the building and find out they're leaning on the wrong
Against the wrong
building.
wall.
So that's why I then introduce you to the MOJO ladder. The MOJO ladder at its foundation is awakening, where you're learning your strengths, identifying the identity that you want, grounded in your values, and really self-mastery happens there. The next level is elevation. And in that elevation is where you start to build you look back at your life and say, what can I harness? And you begin to build strategies. And at the third level is activation, which is pulling the trigger. And this is habituation, because it's what we do frequently and as a habit that begins to define who we are. So that's the MOJO ladder.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I like how you talk about the fact that you get to a point and you realize that you've worked your way and you're up this hill or up this ladder, and you realize that the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. For some people, this is a huge thing, right? Because they've invested pretty much all of their lives, for people who realize this at a really, really young age. So from your experience, like, what is that? How do you start to help people get into that shift? Like, it's not too late. I think it's the first, helping people just make the shift in their mindset to understand that, look, you can still climb up this ladder again. I often find that, sometimes people feel like, they're resigned, that this is my life, this is what it is. They may not like it. There's no joy, there's no fulfillment there, but they just feel there's no time to go back up the ladder.
Yes, and some people are caught up on this four letters, FINE, fine. You ask them how their life is, how things are going, they'll say fine. And 2 minutes later in the conversation, they're telling you how I dread getting up in the morning. I am not even motivated to do my work. My love life, I'm bored. He doesn't give me attention, or she doesn't give me attention. My kids are leaving, and that's how I define myself. Who am I now? So that whole identity. But they lead with fine. And some people believe that facade is good enough. And that's all that I was meant to be. So what I begin to help people to see is that they're more than their job titles. They're more than that identity that they have built so far. And one of the ways that we do that is by inventorying your strengths. What do you have? Because it's those strengths that will allow you. That's how I went from a motorcycle company to a bank. Transferable strengths. You use them in one environment. Imagine if you were in a job where you weren't even able to really use it. So I job crafted, right? Engineering didn't require me to do high performance work organization. I raised my hand and learned that. And it leaned into my strengths. And when I got into a different environment, it became my headline. So many things that you've been doing. So that's a clue. Things that you've been doing in the background. What are the things that you're called on? What do people expect? Like when you're working on the teams, when you're doing your women's committee at the church, what is the thing that Tonbra is like, she's the go-to girl for this, or we know we can do. So that begins to give you clues, but I take you through a structured process of surfacing some of your strengths. I also help you to understand that in order to live a thriving life, a fulfilled life, that if you can work in at least 3 to 4 of your strength areas, then you get into a space called the zone. You get into flow, and I call it MOJO flow. And the MOJO flow really is about being able to do something that you're just so focused on, it takes you away. You are, because you're using strengths that are essential to who you are, so it's your essence, you'll find them effortless to do, because they'll just be your gifts and they energize you.
Yeah, I always say it's like it's going, concurrent with your life rather than countercurrent. When you are not using or leveraging your strengths, it's like you are still moving along, but you're using effort. You're dissipating yourself in order to make that progress.
And the way I show that is flow versus friction. Flow versus friction. What is the friction that's holding you back? And often it's inside you. I call it the private enemy, because we do so much self-sabotage and that whole comparison thing. I'll share a quick story with you. I told you I'm a member of a Delta Sigma Theta, and I was at National Convention, and my line sister, which means that we pledged together 35 years ago, she had just come off stage making her speech for National Secretary. And she said, "How did I do?" I said, "Joy, you did." And her name is Joy Moore, and her mail has always been More Joy. Yes. And I said, "Was this stuff, was this like, where did this come from?" Because I didn't even connect it till later. That's an aside. So More Joy is, another plug for my last sister. But she came off stage. "How did I do?" I said, "You did great." She said, "You're biased." I said, "But you did do great. You did great." It was like 7 candidates, and I thought she just killed it. And I said, "Well, who do you think is your competition?" She looked me square in the eye, and she said, "My only competition is me. My only competition is me. I get better every time. That's what I'm looking for, because my only competition is me." Later on at the conference, she won. So she's like the national secretary of 80,000. We have 80,000 financial members. Can you imagine 80,000 members? We have over 300,000 in the world. So that mindset of my comparison is only in the mirror. So that looking outside, people talk about all the time, comparing your real life to somebody else's filtered life only leaves you depressed, and that emotional state doesn't take you anywhere. So how do you upward spiral? It's, so when people spiral down, depression, is at the bottom, and death actually is at the very bottom of it. But when we upward spiral, we need to find ways to, one, have attention to what our emotions are. How are we feeling in the moment? Like for me, I just got to listen to Mary J. Blige. "I like what I see when I'm looking at me when I'm passing by the mirror, and my spiral is going up. It's going up. It's going up." So know that thing that will take you to that better place is one thing. So getting, managing that part of it is huge for you to begin to see. Maybe it's another way I would say it is Moses, right?
Tell us.
Moses had a staff in his hand. And if you just look at the surface, all it was something to walk with. But how did Moses end up using that staff? He parted the Red Sea. It became a snake. I mean, that's what we have. PatreniaSpeaks helps you to unlock what am I carrying and how can I use it toward my desired identity. We often do something, and you know, coaches, we're all about helping you to see into your blind spots. We're all about helping you to groove new neural paths. Neuroscience says neuroplasticity, we can keep growing and learning, but we've got to find a new way to do things if we want to go to a different place. And helping you to see yourself from a different perspective. That's how you help clients to climb down the ladder and climb up a new one and go to where they want to be. You know, oftentimes we use the eulogy exercise, right? What legacy do you want to leave? What do
What
you want people
legacy
to be
do you
able to
want to
say?
leave? Yes,
And
yes.
and you know, every time you go to a funeral, you often walk away saying, wow, what am I going to do to make sure my life matters? What am I going to do? So I buried my father during COVID. He was 91 years old. And I tell you, my dad died completely empty. And that's how I want my life to be. He left it all here. He was a pastor for 70 years. He was a single
70.
parent. 70, yes. He was called at age 17. He did not want to answer, but God wouldn't let him sleep. He got into his sleep. So dad was a baseball player. He was a hunter. He was, you know, he's a letter carrier. He knew everybody. He had more Christmas gifts at Christmas than anybody else. Can you imagine? Letter carrier and pastor. So he's always giving to people, and he was always blessing and looking at things from a different perspective. So anyway, I learned from him that giving people their flowers while they're on earth. And that's when I met Brala Day as well. I was going through that experience. But dad taught me about giving people their flowers while they live, because we actually did a Thanksgiving service for him, because he beat COVID. At 91, he beat 19. And we had a big ceremony about it. People came online, but that's what led to the MOJO Summit. I do a MOJO Hero Summit every year, and it's celebrating and giving people their flowers while they live, because just getting everyone on that program, you know, and it's during COVID, a lot of people are down, but they were telling the stories. And Reverend Werts helped me do this. He married my husband and I. He taught me how to buy a house. The whole talk about upward spiral, gratitude is so powerful for you to go upward. Celebrating those things and savoring, like when you you know, have a drink like this and you just savoring is another way to take you up. So it's about using your strengths, being mindful and attentive, and not looking outside for your competition, but looking within.
Looking within. I've got one question that, just as we close, most times I find that in terms of just speaking with people, I find that a lot of times when people know their strengths, okay, you know, they've done some of these assessments and they know their strengths, they struggle with applicability. And I love the fact that, you know, from what you've shared today, you've somehow find a way to say, oh, this is my strength, and you put it in another industry, or you plug and play. You know, lots of people find their strength, they know what their strengths are, but it's like, how does it fit into any other space? How do I create an opportunity that is the perfect match for my strengths? Can you talk
I love
on that a little bit?
Yeah, and I'll just take you through. I had something like 7 things you need to thrive, and it does pull into strength. So let me just pull one. Positive perspective. I see the good in the future, right? So research shows that hopeful future expectations, optimistic attitude, and positive views are linked with greater thriving. And thriving is when you're getting beyond fine, right? Living fulfilled life. But a character strength that is central to positive perspective is hope. So if you have a strength of hope, if you're always the person that identifies, you know, we may be going through a mountain, but I'm hoping that faith, that is a core strength that you can apply in any situation. Just like the strength of spirituality, knowing that you are connected with the universe in a meaningful way is a very powerful way to bring the thriving in. It's yielding and saying that it's not all in my power. I don't know everything. And knowing that you're connected to something bigger than you. We talk about the PERMA model, and we use that in MOJO. PERMA means positive emotion, having relationships having meaning in your life and working toward an accomplishment. That's how we have a thriving life. It's not just about one thing. It's connection. Connection is so important. So being proactive in your personality and being able to reach out and say, okay, I want to accomplish this thing. Let me now Google. LinkedIn does it so easily for us now, right? You go through your list. Who's doing something similar? Choose to have a informational interview. How did you get there? Just like when you and I are talking, we're finding intersects. And in that intersects, I'm able to see, oh, you're an engineer too. So engineers aren't just the people with the pencil protector, right? And pins and horn, there were so many dimensions to who we are. And those are the things that then give you confidence that you can bridge. Remember I talked about, for me, central to my brand is bridging the gap between, Africans and African Americans. So one of the things maybe I'll just leave with you to really think about as an individual is you need to be able to rate your energy. Rate your energy 0 to 10. Rate how you're using your time 0 to 10. Money. How are you making money? How you're using money, and how do you feel about the money? 0 to 10. The next one will be your social support. Do you have it? How does it show up? Are they always withdrawing, or are they making deposits? And last but not least, are you living in alignment with a meaning and purpose? Do you feel that the work that you do ends up in a result that makes sense to you? Like, one of the ways I knew I needed to leave corporate real estate at Shell was when I ran into people that I had trained 14 years before at Phillips Consulting. And they said, Patrenia, I'm still using what you trained me on. And they were able to tell me. So that was meaning and purpose, because I was affecting the human condition. If you take all those 5 factors, add them up, and multiply by 2, that gives the percent capacity that you're operating at. If it's below 50, if it's below 75, that means you're probably not aware of your strengths. You're probably not activating them. And you're probably living in the prison of comparison. So we want you to step out and say, stop saying what's wrong with me. Figure out what's strong in me. And that will be the path. Just the first step.
Love it. Thank you so much, Patrenia. What incredible insights. Thank you for bringing all of yourself. Like, you didn't hold back at all. I know that, our listeners have just been enlightening. I love the little assessment. So guys, you guys who've just listened, please make sure you do exactly as you've been instructed to do. Sit down.
Yes.
It is
and be honest.
And be honest as well. Don't lie to yourself. Make sure Go on.
No, I was just going to make something very quick. One of my clients, I asked her to tell me her strengths, and she gave me 1. And I said, come on, let's be honest. This isn't the time to hold back or be modest. Be honest. And I had to then ask her, what would your friends say about you if they were trying to introduce you to somebody or do matchmaking? And then the list was like boom, 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 boom. So as you're doing these assessments, the next step is to really say, what do I have? What am I carrying? And this isn't the time to be modest. This is the time to really come with it. And then we ferret that out, talents versus character values. And I'm doing a mastermind coming up soon. And we'll take people through that intensive work so that you can climb the right ladder. That's what it boils down to.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And just as you close, why is it important? I know you've said it throughout the conversation, but just in your final words, why is it important that people are maximizing themselves, using their strengths as God intended? Why is it important?
There are a lot of things that we don't necessarily like in the world right now. You can be that person that talks about what everyone else is not doing, should be doing, could be doing, or you could identify, how can I make a difference? We don't get to determine the length of our lives, but we can determine the depth. And so many people are skimming the surface right now, trying to be everything everywhere. If you go deep, you'll find there's no one there. And it's Tosin Durotorier that really brought that point out during our MOJO summit. And I just had to sit in it. if you go deep in who you are, that's how you distinguish yourself, and that's how you make impact. You want to go so deep that it's like a ripple, and people begin to see that if Patrenia can do it, then Mary can do it, Adiola can do it, but I do me, I do my unique me. And that's how we all then begin to make a little difference in this world. Just like my 91-year-old dad, when I begin to see dying empty means giving the best of you.
So good. So good. I mean, the phrase that you said that will stay with me forever is, you don't get to determine the length of your days, but you can determine the depth. So good. Thank you so much.
You.
So amazing. Yes. What a great conversation. Thank you so much.
And Tonbra, oh, you're awesome.
Thank you.
You're awesome. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I didn't realize how much we actually have in common. Like, you're like an older version of me. I'm like, hey, where did she come from?
Yes, I'm a grandmother now. Can you imagine? So
I'm just like,
seeing my little people.
Can you believe that, guys? You've got to watch the video of this if you aren't watching this on YouTube. She's gorgeous.
You are too kind. I'm trying to look like you now. Oh, but remember, PatreniaSpeaks. Check out the website, and hey, let's see how we can grow together.
Yes, definitely. All right then. Thank you so much for being on today.